Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this work session and regular meeting of the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board of Directors. I call us to order at 5:30 p.m. We begin tonight with our work session, which is regarding the Arco Eries Charter School application, and we have Assistant Superintendent Dr. McCall. Dr. Assistant Superintendent McCall, how do we do that? I don't know. Anyway,
You got it first.
okay. Assistant Superintendent Dr. McCall to lead us through what the board's role in the process is.
Thank you, and good evening to all of you, board chair, vice chair, board directors, and superintendent. So it is my pleasure to present to you really just an outline of what the board's role is in the process of evaluating a charter proposal. So next slide. So on August 11th, the board voted that the ARCO 80s charter was complete. What that meant is that according to the Oregon revised statutes, and that is 338.045 under sections 2 and 3. Completeness just means that they apply with also our board policy and they completed the application. And now the role for the board is that you must hold a public hearing within 60 days of completeness. And then what that means is on the date that we have selected was September the 22nd, which will then give the ARCO charter team an opportunity to give a presentation outlining why they believe that this charter would serve the TTSD school community, as well as the board will receive the district's assessment of the application, meaning that the superintendent commissioned a team to review the application against the ORS as well as the board's policy, and to see if different sections of it was complete and if there were any questions that we wanted the team to review, then we would have communicated that with the ARCO team. Next slide. And again, this slide really just outlines the evaluation criteria based on our policy LBE, the AR, and the ORS 338, meaning that in the evaluation process, of course, there needs to be an opportunity for a public hearing where members of the community, including educators, parents, students, and other community members, have an opportunity to be heard regarding the charter proposal. And also, part of that is looking at and seeing if the charter proposal is financially stable and has a good management system, as well as their instructional capacity, particularly for our students who are on the margin, as well as being in compliance with any special education or ELL services, as well as the impact on any of our programs, such as our two-way immersion programs and TTSD. What would be the impact on those programs if we were to stand up a charter, as well as staffing, HR arrangement, and if any past performances is applicable. Next slide. So I just wanted to just share a little bit about like what we did as a review team. Like I said before, when we got the application back in May, we did an initial review of completeness, and then what we made sure that the proposal, we looked at some of our current programs, and again, you will receive our kind of a assessment of that and before the next board meeting. Next slide. So again, by having data, and we say data, that also includes public hearing from any of our school communities, within the 30 days of the public hearing, the role of the board is really to consider just a district evaluation, as well as the presentation from the ARCO charter team, and then make a decision. So based on those criteria, if the board determines that the charter meets all of the criteria based on the ORS as well as the district's policy, then it would be approved by the board, and then we would create an agreement between the charter and the district. If denied, the board would have to provide a written reason why the proposal was denied, and even suggest some remedies. Okay. I think that actually very brief explanation, and I want to open it up to any questions.
Can I add on to that a little bit,
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
McCall? First off, thank you so much for the presentation. And the primary purpose of us having this work session is so that all of our board members really understand, one, what the process is leading up to when you're doing an evaluation and making a decision on the charter application. And the next big segment is, or the next big milestone in this process is the 22nd. So we want to make sure that you kind of understood what the parameters were and what your role was, because we know that we haven't had one of these for a long time, so it serves as a really good refresher, and want to use this time so that you could ask any questions about the process, or just have any dialogue related to what we're going to anticipate seeing on the 22nd, so we can have those kinks ironed out, because time is of the essence, and we want to make sure that we're really focused during that time as a board.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions?
So,
Vice Chair?
and these may be things that we just stew on and consider for the 22nd, but these are kind of my first thoughts, and sort of, and looking through the application and the conversation that we had when we voted on this in August. I think my biggest wondering still is sort of the rationale of a location here, and sort of because typically there's an identified need. And while I know they talked about that there's a lot of people from sort of the outskirts of Portland that have come to Beaverton, that their first location, and there's kind of a lottery system, they have a lot of interest. We also have TWE here. And so I think it goes hand in hand with my wondering / concern on the impact of our TWE schools, if that happens. And generally we would hear like, oh, there's all these parents that are wishing they had blank kind of program. And I feel like their main goal is bilingual education and a robust math curriculum. And I feel like our TWE programs would do that. So I think that's my biggest wondering kind of going through this process. I don't know if that's what we're supposed to say here, but those are my boards.
Just again, that's a question that our team also posed, and in the summary that you give, we'll also list some of that, like, you know, a little bit of the history of our programs, how they're doing, as well as the location. When someone submits a charter, they don't have to have identified a location in the initial application, but that is one of the questions that they did inquire about, and so we've already shared that information with them, and so that might be something that I want them to be prepared to be able to answer, given the reality. If we don't have space in TTSD, where would they have their program?
I think your line of thinking is spot on for the conversations to have on the 22nd, which is what are some implications for approving or denying this, especially with existing programming? What kind of competing values are there? does it fill a need or a niche that doesn't exist for students? I mean, those are all questions that you all should be considering, and I think the context with TWE is essential in this group's decision.
Director Miles.
So one of the things that I think that we should keep in mind as a board, and I'm looking through our policy right now, and I'm very, very familiar with ORS 338, is that in the end, we can only make a decision based on the criteria in ORS 338. So, and the district's recommendation should be aligned to that criteria. That should come to us aligned to the criteria, and that's what we should be basing our decision on. So, and all of these are good questions about, like, what is your rationale? Why do you want to be here? The closest criteria, can't see with them.
It's a long flight.
That too. The closest criteria to the impact of the program on TTSD is whether the value of the charter school is outweighed by any directly identifiable significant and adverse impact of the quality on the quality of the public education of students residing in the district. So that is a criteria that can be considered. That one is super sticky, and so that that one would need to be like, that one is super sticky. I will just say this, having worked in this area for a long time. So it's really important that that we keep the criteria in mind. It is tempting to say or ask the question, does the district need this school? Does the district want the school? I'm not saying anybody's asking that. I'm just saying, having worked in this realm for a long time, and in the end, that if the application meets criteria, we have to move forward with that. If it doesn't meet criteria, then there is an appeals process with that would come next. I did look at our policy, and there is no additional criteria that we have in our policy. We could if we wanted to, but we don't. So I think that our job is just to really keep that in mind. And I thank the district for including the application for us to look over. I think that's great. And then it's just important for us to remember as a board that our job is not to dive into the details and do the analysis. It's our job to receive the district's recommendation and to look at that as, you know, they're the experts in that piece. So I'm not trying to chastise anybody or anything. It's just like, I think it's good for us to just keep reviewing our role in that as we move forward, because it gets into a realm where it's really tempting to dive into the details.
I think that's really important. That's the point of us meeting today, is that we're really clear on what our role is. So I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's beneficial to have somebody who has extensive experience in this world as well, to make sure that we're lined out.
And just to clarify, the policy you're referring to, Director Miles, is that LBE?
Yes.
So I think that would be a useful thing for all the board members as sort of homework before our next meeting, to go back and reread that policy and make sure we understand it.
And it's attached on the other board memo as well, but I can resend it if need be.
Okay. Are there any other questions? So one of my questions is, I understand that our role is essentially to evaluate the district's evaluation. So how much leeway do we have in terms of, are we just evaluating the criteria that the district has evaluated, and then we have degrees of agreement or disagreement with the district's recommendation? Is that how it works? We can't go in another direction because we can only use those criteria, correct? We can't say, well, there's this other criteria that I like. We have to stay within those criteria, and then we evaluate the district's response to those.
So you're evaluating the district's response, but you're also evaluating the criteria that's in the ORS.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you all collectively have to make a decision now to what degree you can deliberate or not. Like, that's something I can do more research on and make sure that you know exactly what the parameters are.
Okay. Thank you.
That's why, there's a little time after the public hearing, after the presentation, and also our summary for the board to consider. And that, when I say 30, that's 30 calendar days. So there is some time. And again, if it's, there is an appeal process if it's denied, and the charter, and they know all of, I've been in close contact with the director and letting them know if there's any questions that we might have that's not clear, so that they can be prepared to present.
And presumably, we would be making this decision at our October 20th meeting, or the
Yes.
October 6th, something like that?
As long as it's within the 30 calendar days.
So yeah, you would do it as soon as the first October meeting, and as late as the second October meeting, so long as it's within 30 days of the 22nd.
Yes.
Okay. And then if we decide at that meeting to approve, then the next step would be negotiating the contract
Yes.
with them. And does the board have a role in that? Or is that something that, again, the district does, and then the contract comes to the board for approval?
That would be something that the district could do, then bring to the board. And the applicant would also submit a copy of the approval to the State Board of Education as well. But that is something that we could help with.
And then the board approves the contract.
Yes.
One of the pieces that I'm most interested in, actually, is one that Vice Chair Irvin alluded to, is the public support, the community support for it, simply because I haven't heard anything from the community. So I'm wondering, how do we know what constitutes support? How many people giving public comment? How many emails we receive? What's the break point of, oh, this is a lot of support, or this is a little support? And I guess that's one where I just don't know how I would gauge it. So I was wondering if you could give me any guidance on that. Like,
That is,
it's been so long since we've done a
is a-
charter, I don't know, I can't remember how many people we had.
that is a great question, actually. And that is one where I'm wondering, and I'm the Director Miles, have you had any experience with that portion of the evaluation from the public comments?
So one thing that could be done, and additional information can be asked for at any time during the process, if they have done surveys, or have had community groups or something, we could ask, the district could ask them for evidence of that, of the kind of support they've received. An applicant should be able to show evidence of some sort of documented support. Theoretically, they will also show support at the hearing, but between now and the hearing, follow-up questions can be asked by, information can be asked for at any time.
Yes.
And so that would be board members talking to the superintendent, and then the superintendent, we don't go directly to the applicant to ask them those questions, correct?
That is correct, because there's already one. So we had some questions as well, the review team, which I put to them and gave them like a timeline to respond back. And as of yesterday, they have responded to some of those questions. But if there's any additional things like, how do you know about support for this program, we can ask that before the 22nd.
Okay. I had another question and it's just gone out of my head. Oh, I hate this. Somebody else ask a question while I'm thinking about it.
Well, I'll look forward to hearing staff's recommendation and application of the criteria, and hope it'll be a good process. Thank you for all your work.
I remembered what it was, and I actually want to ask Director Miles, in your day job, what do you see as the biggest pitfalls that boards fall into in this process that we need to be mindful of?
Getting into the details. I think that, I mean, like I said, reading the application is great. I think it's good to have context. I think it is, well, the other piece is not sticking with the statutory criteria, right? I mean, like I mentioned, I think one of the biggest pitfalls is just saying, do we need or want this charter school, right? Which is not part of the criteria.
Yes. Right.
And so really sticking with the criteria and just, and you know, read ORS 338. Okay, don't just read the criteria. Because there are 9 criteria, and those are the ones that we must use, right? I mean, there's a whole appeals process. Part of the appeals process to the State Board of Ed is, did the district follow the criteria, right? And so it's really important, and staff will keep us on target, but it's really important that we stick with what were the criteria. And so getting off of the criteria and having, I mean, we can have all the philosophical conversations we want, but making decisions that are not based on statute, you know, will be important and criticized eventually. So getting away from that at the global level is a problem.
Okay.
So when we have this other meeting, will there be like a rubric with that criteria prepared for us?
We can prepare that for you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, 'cause then that would be the easiest way to not get into that kind of trouble, right? If we have a rubric, we follow that with the criteria outlined on the ORS, and then we just go based on like a rating system of sorts.
Yeah. So I already have I've developed a rubric that outlines each of, particularly under sections 2 and 3, each of the criteria, and then their response to it, which is aligned to their application. And it could be a simple yes or no, or more information needed, something to that effect.
I was just going to say that we're almost at this point, we just need to be checking boxes to make sure the things are there, rather than the substance of what it is that is there. And I think that will be challenging for us because we care deeply, and also it makes it very straightforward and clear what our role is.
Yeah.
Actually, I might find it more useful. I mean, I think some of them will be a yes, no, but I think on some of them it might be useful to have that rubric, have some wiggle room, like how are they on public support? Is that a 1 to a 5? Maybe it's a 4, maybe it's a 2, rather than just yes, they have it, or no, they don't. Similarly, on what was the other one that caught my eye on that?
But the thing with that, if it's a rating system, I mean, it still leaves it up to subjectivity, right?
Yeah,
Like it's like, it should be clear, yes or no. And then that way, if we have so many no's, then we can say, okay, let's kick it back to them, and then they can appeal or whatever, right?
So my question with the rubric is, does that get back to us evaluating the proposal? Like, what are we evaluating?
I think it was just a way for us to see in the application and what's in statute, have they hit all of those targets
Yes.
within their application? So we can, like, I was starting to go through, because of the ORS, like, did they mention that? And I'm scrolling through, and I can, like, in my brain be like, they did 2C, they did 2D. But then I think what Director Jaimes was saying was, would there be a way to just sort of have this for us, just that sort of checklist or rubric prepared that just says, here are the areas that have been identified as, yes, they have met all of these areas, they're included in the application. Here's where there might need to be more information so that we can understand and, like, basically tie together everything in the ORS with everything in their application in a way that's easy for us to see visually.
So just so my understanding is that staff would fill out and that we would see, or that
Yes.
we are filling out? Okay. Okay, because I'm like, if we're filling that out, then we're evaluating it.
No.
No,
All right,
they would do
thank
that
you.
so that we can see it.
That we can see
So
what
that we can
staff is doing. Okay.
Better understand the nature of the
Right. Okay.
of the
Yes,
recommendation.
thank you for that
And
clarification.
we've already done a lot of that
Yeah,
work
I was
for you
gonna-
all.
Yeah, Director Weston had.
Director Rustin.
Thank you. I feel like this is really similar to a land use planning application, which I've worked in that area previously. And I think if staff makes the recommendation and applies the criteria, then we're going to really need to have a high bar and articulate why we think a particular criteria does or doesn't meet, or why or why not a particular criteria is met. Like if we think that that's not what staff is recommending, we really need to be articulating why that would be. And so I think it's reasonably straightforward. Staff's going to make a recommendation. They're going to say if the criteria is met or not. And if we disagree, we're going to really have to articulate why.
Which
And-
is
Yeah.
which is exactly why the rubric with it already outlined for us. Then we can just see, okay, yes, this is, we agree with this, right? And then like you're saying, if for some reason we disagree, I don't know why we would, but if we did, then we could ask them to bring back more information.
Yeah, so what I do have for you is what I hear some of y'all saying. It is, here's the ORS, here's the LBE, and it is yes or no and evidence aligned to. So to Director Miles' point is that you can go over what we've already done, and you will be able to see where we went line by line to the ORS and the application. So you'll be able to follow that. I think that is what you're asking.
Because I think even though we aren't the evaluators of it, we do have a responsibility as the board to make sure that the district has proven its cases to its decision. And so having that breakdown, I think, would be very useful to us to say, yes, the district has done its due diligence in whatever decision it has made. Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts, wonderings? Okay, well then, thank you so very much. That was a very informative presentation, and I will adjourn our work session at 5:57.